Orlando called me and said, well, gosh, maybe you can talk on how you make your barbed wire or something like that. I said, this is only a 5-minute procedure, so I'll talk about making fish patterns. But I'll step back to the barbed wire ones. All this really amounts to is 2 coat hangers, and I chuck one into a drill, the other into a vise, and just let it give 2 or 3 good wraps. Just take some copper, solid copper wire, make the barbs, and I solder on the legs for the bird. And to get the rusted effect, I take Elmer's school glue and just mop this whole wire full of that school glue and sprinkle it with sawdust. And once that sets up and dries, I take I think like a burnt umber with a stippling brush, and I'll just saturate that sawdust with that paint, and this is the effect it gets. I think it looks pretty good. And again, I got that idea from Ben Donahue, who is going to be coming over in February doing a class with all the different ideas. So I'll pass this around. You can touch and feel and look out. This is sharp. I'm making different fish patterns. I guess the first thing you've got to come up with is, what really do I want to make? And where can I come up with an idea? I was in a magazine, and I found, I don't know if this is going to show or not, I found a picture that a taxidermist had made, and he calls it his museum quality fish. But I like the dimensions of it, and the shape, just the way it was laid out. So I took this over to Kinkel's, and for $5 later, I had this. And everything is in proportion to size and so on. So this is what I would use for that pattern. And there is a book out. It's out by Ed Willicke, and you can order it through his website and through his son Kyle. It has patterns of practically every fish known to Michigan, and I think these are all just freshwater fish. I don't think there's any saltwater fish in here, but it's very handy. A lot of these you have to enlarge to be accurate, and a lot of them are give a little bit of animation to them, and they give the cross sections and the fin sizes. So this is a handy book. You have everything from brown trout to panfish, perch, bluegills. I would highly recommend, if you're into fish carving, to have one of these. Order it through that website. That's the guy's bread and butter right now. Another way to come up with a pattern is the back of one of these. I was fishing last year in Canada, and I caught a 20-inch brook trout. And I wanted to make a carving of this thing. So basically what I did was just lay the fish flat on the surface, and I'm going to draw something on the board here, if there's a marker. Okay, this is the dorsal fin, and the fish is laying flat on the ground. To make an accurate mark, what I did is I took a piece of flat board, and this here is the pencil. I duct taped that to that, and that's what I went around the fish with. So I had a true dimensional pattern. If this would be the fish, the pencil would follow true this way. You wouldn't get this effect, to raise and lower it. But anyway, this is the pattern that I came up with. And actually, this is the trout that I had up in the contest last year in Grand Rapids. Now, if you want to animate it, I love to put life into a fish. Now this one here, you can see we've got quite a drastic animation to the tail and to the back third of the fish. I'll point it this way, you can see it on the camera there. You can, most of the animation is going to come from the back of the dorsal fin to the tail. If you look from the top, the front of the dorsal fin, I'm wrong with that. If you look at the front half of the fish, it's generally straight. The tail on down is where you have most of your animation. The reason being is that this part of the fish through here is rib cage. It's rib cage and all your entrails and everything else in there. So generally speaking, I was told that that is how I'm going to say the anatomy of a fish would really be in the water. So in order to get that kind of a swooping action to it, what I did is I have my pattern. This is the pattern again that I took out of Ed Willicke's book, and I took the top view of it and I cut it all in small sections, and I hot melt glued a wire to each section so that you can go through and get a animation to it, and you're going to still have the right circumference, you're going to have the right flow of all the proportions of the fish. And doing that with the top view like this, you got to kind of keep in mind that the part that's going to pivot in the fish is the backbone. So this wire represents the backbone, looking from the top of the fish down. This is the top view. The side view, in my flimsy old pattern here, I got the same thing. Now if you want to carve it with tail up or tail down, the backbone is going to be the pivot point. And you can see how that fish would be up on a plaque with the tail up or tail down. And again, very little movement from the front of the dorsal fin to the head. Most all of it's going to come from the back through the adipose and into the caudal area. One thing that is the rule of thumb, I'm sure Orlando taught this, and don't ever forget it, when you make a pattern, curved or straight, this is the profile. This is what you're going to cut out on your bandsaw, all right? And when you make your cut, and when you have your profile of your fish, you draw a center line. And don't ever touch that center line, because that's going to ruin the proportions of the fish. That stays until the very final sanding. And just a little thing, I'm working on this fish now, and last year at the sports show, I had this trout showing there, and it was critiqued by Gary Birch, who is a nationally known taxidermist. And he was telling me that I had the same size scales on the side and on the top and on the belly. So I'm taking that critique and I'm including that in with this fish, where now I'm putting the larger scales on the side. I'm going to taper off here with a smaller scale and less heat, so that as you come through the backbone and through the belly, it's going to be just a small dimple instead of a full scale. The reason I attached the fin and the tail, I usually don't, but with this kind of a curve, this tail would be ingrain and it would be way too brittle. So that's why I attached the tail, and this is going to be a radically curved fish coming up around a log in the water. So I want to give the look of the dorsal fin that's being flushed over with the current. And that's all I know about fish carving. Okay, any questions? Material this year to make, this is just regular old wire, just solid core electrical wire. I stripped the coating off it, and that's all I did. And it's hot melt glued each little section so that you can.
How far apart do you have the sections?
About that far. I don't know. I made them about ½ inch, something like this on this size fish. A bigger fish, yeah, you can see.
Now the gap in between them.
Oh, down. Okay, what you would say down here. Well, everything is straight until you bend it, of course. No, I don't. Now, obviously, a fish with tail up or tail down is going to have a lot less animation than, that's about as far as you would go with a fish with a tail down. Where when you would have an animation on the top side, of course, you can almost make them into a horseshoe. But another little trick that I learned, when you have your pattern, now this is a well-used pattern. I use spray paint to transfer my pattern to the wood. I lay it on there, just a little can of black aerosol, and you've got a perfect pattern on there. But I take a wood burner and I will cut the highlights of the places that I want to show through as references. I'll touch those with my wood burner, just enough to make a little slot. I got the mouth, I got the maxillary there, and then the gills. Then when you lay it down and you would spray your pattern, obviously this is going to come through and show you where all the reference points, your eyes, your gills, and everything are going to be at. Basswood. What's what? Basswood. Yes. Yeah. I just use basswood. I have a source for it that's real cheap, so yeah, that's. Pardon?
Even with trout.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's trout wood, really. Pardon? I use a lot of different methods in painting them. I do a lot of airbrushing, okay, but at a seminar back at the sports show a couple years ago, there was a fella, Rick Crane, his name is. He's going to be there again this year. He shows a lot of different techniques on painting a fish. It's awful hard to get a flesh tone on a fish. The gills, the bottom of the cheek down here, I would call it, the gills in through here. He says, "Hey, women's makeup. How much more of a flesh tone do you want? So we're using women's makeup. We're using I use eyeshadow or white eyeliner to highlight a lot of the little gill spots. Rub it on and wipe off what you don't want. You can't paint anything that detailed. So that's just what, one of the tricks I use. Colored pencils, watercolored pencils come in handy for making the blood vessels in the cheek and in the chin, that kind of stuff.
What kind of wood?
Basswood.
Well,
Yep.
the early fish carvers were using this regular wood because the grain went all one way.
Yep. Nope, that's just the way I was taught, and
You carve the tail.
how did I carve the tail?
Yeah, is that power carving?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is all power carving. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I made the tail, and I had about an inch long little tab that I could hold on to. And let me see. Right here, it should have been an inch and a half long because I ran my bit right across my thumb. But yeah, you carve that, then you just make a slot in the caudal area of the fish, which is the tail here. And then I would just work my big tab down to that would fit into that. And this is just automotive bondo that we use for attaching it. Yeah, just regular carve bondo. And just slap it in there, have it ooze out all over, and leave it sit. Once it's set up, you can sand it right down to, the texture you want.
Are your fins inserted or?
Yes, they are on this one. They are because I have radical. I'll put it this way. If you want to zoom up on it, I'll also show. You can see how my dorsal fin falls way over the back of the fish. The dorsal fin falls way over. That's because the pressure of the water as the fish is making a swooping action. The pressure of the water is forcing it that way around. I have an aquarium in my shop that I sit and I spend a lot of time watching them as they swim, watching, I'll put some minnows in there and see how they actually will open their mouth and chase minnows and that kind of stuff. So, and I do a lot of fishing. I'm a big trout fisherman, so. That's about what I have. Any questions? Thank you. Hello, my name is Brian Sale. I'm with the Woodland Carvers, and I carve trout and salmon. Most everything I do is out of basswood, and I carve different dioramas. The larger fish that I do out of a high-density urethane foam, very similar to what this trout is over here. This is a high-density foam so that the size of the wood will not expand and contract with the humidity in the house, along with a piece of wood this big would be quite heavy and hard to hang on a wall. These are what I do with a clear casting resin. This is a water splash that is made with a hot clear casting resin. And the splash droplets are made with monofilament fish line that will never fade and never droop. A lot of my pedestal fish I do out of like a PVC pipe, and that's painted to be like a marbleized texture. And I have a bluegill that I have spent numerous hours on, making the scales anatomically correct, and painting each individual scale, hand tipping the scales. This is what I do for a hobby. I spend a lot of time in the winter, and in summertime I hopefully can catch what I make. If I don't, I'll try to carve it. Thank you.